The adage goes that it's not how you start, but how you finish that really counts. And that really applies to Game Awards 2025 because when you look at the whole slate of announcements at Game Awards 2025, they actually showed a lot of cool stuff. But the finale, the final big showstopper, right? The one last thing was such a letdown to so many people that it in many ways like soiled the overall optics surrounding Game Awards 2025. And look, that doesn't discount all of the other reveals. It doesn't discount the award winners. But I think that if they had just changed the order of some things and paced the show a certain way, it would have gone down much better. And I'll get to the cooler announcements in a bit, but right now I want to talk about the reveal of Highguard. And I think this is something that many of you may be aware of right now. So right here we have the world premiere of the game, and you can see from the likes to dislikes ratio how poorly this is being received. And this is the Game Awards upload, but even just the trailer on its own on, like IGN and whatever, the likes to dislikes ratio is extremely negative. So Highguard is a game that's being developed by developers who worked on Titanfall as well as Apex Legends. And that certainly has its appeal, but then the game that they showcased with the trailer that concluded the Game Awards was a game that many people are calling, just for lack of better words, generic. It is essentially yet another hero shooter. And while there are some cool aspects to the game, ultimately, this just looks like any other hero shooter, and that was the last thing that people expected the Game Awards to close with, something that really wasn't like mind-blowing or, one of the big reveals that people would have been really, really hyped about. Those actually came a lot earlier than expected, and it was just a matter of reordering some things. So poorly is Highguard's announcement being received that people are basically saying that the Game Awards concluded by basically announcing Concord 2. Nothing that really alleviates the fatigue that people have towards these kinds of live services. I mean, even the name Highguard evokes Overwatch. The word high and over are kind of in line, and then the word watch and guard are also aligned. So Highguard almost sounds like a play on words on Overwatch, almost like if you'd call Metal Gear Iron Cog or something. And the way Jeff Keighley set this up as a major announcement also didn't help matters. So here's the segment in question. And you can see right here from the way it opens, it makes it feel like this is going to be a massive reveal, like incredibly hyped. I mean, looking at this, people were speculating Elder Scrolls 6. It looks kind of similar to that teaser from many years ago. It was like that level of expectation.
Our last reveal at the Game Awards is a teaser for something years and years away. But not tonight. Our final world premiere comes from 61 members of the team that built Apex Legends and Titanfall. 4 years ago, the principals founded a new independent studio with the hopes of pushing the shooter genre forward with a new original game. They've done it in complete secrecy, which is even more amazing because the game is very deep into development. The power of independent, self-published studios to push this medium forward is a growing and I think positive theme in our industry. And so tonight, you're not only going to get the announcement of the game, but also your first look at the gameplay. I've played it, and after you see this trailer, I think you're going to want to as well. Welcome to Highguard.
So you can see Jeff Keighley's really hyping this up, calling it like a new, unique game. But it's not particularly unique. It is a new game, but it tackles a genre that has worn out its welcome, if you will. And look, the gameplay looks really smooth. You can tell that the Respawn DNA is very well here in many ways. When you look at how the game plays and the mobility, how smooth that all looks, and the shooting and everything. But it's and I'd say it looks better than Concord, but it's... It just doesn't push the boundaries in any way, really. And so I believe that had this game been announced in the middle of the Game Awards, had it not been hyped up so much and been made to be the big finale, right? That one last thing. Maybe people would have been more tolerant or open-minded to it.
The enemy is off gate. I'm coming for you.
But the way this was presented did not help its optics and its marketing. Making this the one last thing of Game Awards 2025 ultimately ended up hurting the marketing of this game more than helping it. And yeah, I mean, it's got like Overwatch vibes. It really does. Like some of these powers and ultimates. You can see right here, it takes a lot of inspiration from past hero shooters.
I am a warden, and this is my oath.
So there it is. It's a free-to-play hero shooter coming out on January 26, 2026. And what's wild to me is that, you know, they announced some pretty major things like a new Divinity game, which is what that statue tease was all about, as well as, I mean, a new KOTOR game, Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic, being led by Casey Hudson. I think if they would have placed that as the big finale or Divinity as the big finale, I think Star Wars is even better because, you know, that wasn't even something they had teased, right? That was kept in complete secret. Nobody knew about this. And so had they kept Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic for the finale, I think the narrative would have gone down so much more differently. I think placing Highguard as the big finale was the biggest mistake that the Game Awards made, both for the optics of the Game Awards and how, you know, it's not how you start, but how you finish that leaves the biggest impression, but also for the developers who are kind of being lambasted for making this the big showstopper and then for showing a game that ultimately, for being the big final showstopper, the big, you know, one last thing, doesn't show anything that is particularly compelling, that is particularly boundary pushing. It just looks like yet another one of those games they've already seen and played before. I mean, who knows? Maybe there are some unique features to Highguard that will set it apart from the other games of this genre, but the trailer certainly didn't do a phenomenal job at showing that, if that is the case. And the thing is, when you compare the reveal of Highguard compared to past Game Awards One Last Thing, yeah, I mean, Highguard just doesn't hold that level of prestige. So last year at the Game Awards 2024, they closed the show with Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, the new game from Naughty Dog. And while I know discussion surrounding Last of Us Part 2 still looms over, the fact remains that Naughty Dog is an incredibly celebrated studio, and any new game from them is going to draw a lot of attention, especially when it's something like this, which is this sci-fi game inspired by like anime such as Akira and Cowboy Bebop and the like. So, you know, it was a worthy trailer and a worthy reveal to close the show. Then in Game Awards 2023, they closed with Monster Hunter Wilds, which, you know, Monster Hunter being such a big IP now and a new entry in the Monster Hunter series being such a hyped announcement, this was a worthy way to close out the show. And then we've got Game Awards 2022, which closed with FromSoft coming on stage to announce Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon, which was highly anticipated due to the fact that the Armored Core series had been dormant for so long. And, you know, FromSoft announcing this was really a huge and monumental deal. Those are the kinds of finales that are expected at the Game Awards. And there were so many other announcements that happened in the middle of the Game Awards that would have better served that finale, like Divinity, like Star Wars, or, you know, hell, the confirmation that Leon Kennedy is returning for Resident Evil 9 and that gameplay footage would have been a better closer than Highguard. It's just weird how they front-loaded so much of the most hyped announcements and then closed off with, you know, essentially what people are considering to be Concord 2. And yeah, I mean, folks online already commenting. You got Tom Moran, senior editor at The Verge, highlighting what I think many people are echoing in terms of sentiment, saying, I hope there's something unique about it. Otherwise, it's another free-to-play shooter that will struggle to survive. And I do agree with this. And then tweets like these are going viral. You know, Jeff hypes up the final game reveal. It's literally Concord 2. Second time's the charm. People going as far as tweeting things like, and for our last world premiere, straight shit from an ass. I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't think the game's going to be bad. Again, like, the gameplay does look really just smooth and crisp. And like, it has the potential to be fun. It's just, man, why did that have to be the big final reveal for the Game Awards? Why did that have to be the thing that closed out the Game Awards? It reminds me of like that one BlizzCon when they thought that closing the show with Diablo Immortal would be a good idea when that was the flagship announcement, a mobile Diablo game. It just felt like a very tone-deaf way to announce this game. But overall, again, when you look at the full slate of announcements, there was actually a lot of cool stuff. The new Divinity trailer looked sick. It was all CGI. There was no gameplay. But, with it being Larian Studios and them having garnered a certain level of goodwill, they're like one of the few who can kind of get away with this. Then you've got Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic, KOTOR spiritual successor, also strictly a CGI trailer, but the very existence of this game is monumental. And Casey Hudson directing this, the head on Mass Effect, and the guy who directed the original KOTOR, that's actually a pretty big deal. And, keeping our fingers crossed that that turns out okay. Leon Kennedy for Resident Evil 9, it's something that was kind of already leaked, but getting that confirmation and seeing how good the gameplay looks was really, really great. Then we got Tomb Raider, which is getting both a remake and reimagining of the very first game that's coming out in 2026. And then you've got Tomb Raider Catalyst, which is a full-fledged sequel coming out in 2027. Control Resident got announced, and it looks insane. Visuals look trippy as all hell. And Remedy are, just clearly pulling all stops for that one. I'm pretty excited about that one as well. Mega Man made a comeback with a dual override, and not even Mega Man X, like OG Mega Man. And the visuals already for that are looking really, really good. I'm liking the art style that they're pushing with that. Star Wars got another announcement in the form of Galactic Racer. They're bringing back pod racing, and it's being made by developers who worked on Burnout and Need for Speed. It's coming out in 2026. I'm pretty hyped for that one, I'll be honest with you. I have fond memories of the N64 pod racing game. You've got the Total War series finally announcing a Warhammer 40K version of this game, which is something that people have been clamoring for. That was pretty hype. Gang of Dragon, which is Nagoshi's take on Yakuza, essentially. He left Sega and started his own studio, and this is essentially him saying, I'm going to make a Yakuza game that is legally distinct from Yakuza, but that is within my own vision, and it's starring none other than Ma Dong-seok, who's an absolute badass, and I'm very curious to see how that turns out. I hope it turns out really good. Though I will say that seeing some of the screenshots from Steam, this is what gameplay looks like. I don't know. It does. Maybe it's because it's so early in development, but there's something about this that makes me a little more cautiously optimistic about Gang of Dragon. But I genuinely want this game to do well. Just the gameplay screenshots right now are not looking particularly confidence-inspiring for me personally. But still, a very interesting announcement that we'll have to wait and see how it all turns out. And then you've got, No Law was announced, which is this like Dying Light meets Cyberpunk style of game made by the developers of Ascent, the top-down shooter. You've got Ace Combat 8 getting a new trailer and announcement. Lords of the Fallen 2 getting this gameplay trailer that looks really cool. There's Decrepit, which is this first-person Souls-like, essentially. It's like Elder Scrolls meets Dark Souls coming out in 2026, which looks pretty hype. Phantom Blade Zero finally got a release date of September 9th, 2026, and I'm super hyped for that game. Pragmata got a release date of April 24th, 2026. So, when you look at the full slate of announcements, again, they actually showed off some really hype stuff. But you got to pace those out so that people don't burn out by the end of like a 3-hour show. And that's kind of what happened with the Game Awards, and people were really waiting to see like what that big final reveal would be to revitalize some of the diminishing interest in terms of the announcements. And instead of saving the best for last, Jeff Keighley took this risk by announcing Highguard and making that the big final reveal, and it ultimately ended up backfiring. But with all said and done, the cool announcements are still cool. And, Expedition 33, congratulations to them for just like sweeping at the Game Awards. It reminds me of like how Lord of the Rings swept at the Oscars and won like 11 Academy Awards. Big shout out to Flute Guy. In my opinion, he won the Game Awards. That guy rocked out with like 5 different flutes, just like quick changing between them. It was wild. That dude, I want to be like him. He's who I aspire to be like. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the Game Awards overall, what you thought of the show, what you thought of Highguard as the big finale reveal, what you think of Highguard just as a game, just based on the trailer alone, and what you think about all of the award winners, and what was your favorite announcement from the Game Awards. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.